Bonjour Donna, bonjour Johanna.
Bonjour.
Ça va bien Johanna?
Oui, ça va bien.
Bonjour.
Super,
Et
top.
toi?
Ça va, merci. Ça va Donna? Bonjour Bethan.
Bonjour.
Oui, ça va. Et toi?
Ça va, merci. Bonjour Nora,
Bonjour.
bonjour Bella. Hmm. Bon, j'espère que tout le monde va bien. I hope that everybody's all right. Um, we'll still be waiting for a couple minutes until everybody joins, and then we're going to be able to proceed with the class. Hmm. Bonjour le gars. Ça va? Tu nous entends le gars? Hey. Bonjour Kiara. Ça va? Ok.
Bonjour,
Ça va?
ça va très bien. Et toi?
Super, merci. Okay, since most of you are here, we're going to be able to start right away, okay? So as always, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Most of you weren't there on Tuesday, so it's totally okay. So, for those of you who couldn't watch the recording of the class or look at the presentation on the Google Drive, so I'm basically going to present again this new unité, this new theme, okay? So we're basically talking about vacances et voyages. Does anybody uh, doesn't understand what's vacances et voyages? No problem with the vocabulary here. Vacances et voyages, okay? So the first class we were talking about, so we talked about transports, okay? We talked a little bit about some conjugation. We started to look at the third group, okay? So that was a bit tricky since the third group is called or considered as one of the irregular type of verb in French, okay? So again, we're going to look at some review of last class so you won't be lost. Bonjour Alma, ça va? Ok, donc aujourd'hui, on va voir. So we're going to review firstly, again, le féminin et le masculin, les verbes du troisième groupe, okay, so three group verbs. We saw the verbs faire et prendre. Does anybody have trouble understanding those words? Faire. So faire is something that we saw previously, but prendre is not something we saw previously. So maybe can someone in the group tell me what prendre means? What verb is it?
To take.
To take. Yeah. Merci Nora. Donc prendre is to take. Okay. We're going to continue with the vocabulary of les transports. Okay. So same thing in English. And next up, so today we're going to learn about la valise. So valise isn't a transparent word, but I assume that most of you have encountered this word when you were traveling or coming to France. So la valise, what does it mean?
Is it suitcase?
Yes, it's suitcase, yeah. La valise. So we're going to learn a bit about la valise. We're still going to talk about les prépositions, okay? This time they're going to be used in a specific manner, okay? So again, a, o, and en. And then we're going to learn about some of the first group verbs, third group verbs, and then we're going to talk about la francophonie, okay? I assume that some of you may know what la francophonie is. I assume that at least Joanna, you know what's la francophonie?
I think so.
So again, we're not going to talk about it yet, but this is something that we're going to see today. Okay. Maybe you're going to be able to explain to the class what's la francophonie. Okay. So here's the table of contents. So reviewing, we're going to talk about la valise with les clichés. Okay. Then we're going to talk about le voyage, okay, with the preposition and also that sort of stuff. And then we're going to finish with the francophonie. Okay. So, comment ça va aujourd'hui? Comment allez-vous? Bah tiens, Félix qui vient d'arriver. Bonjour Félix, comment ça va? I think that he left us in the moment. Okay, whatever. Comment ça va, Bethan?
Oui, ça va. Et
Ça
toi?
va? Ça va, merci. Okay, so Felix should be back now. Comment ça va, Nora?
Ça va bien. Et toi?
Ça va, merci, super. Est-ce que tu peux demander à quelqu'un d'autre dans la classe?
Ça va. Comment ça va, Joanna?
Ça va bien, merci. Bella, comment ça va?
Ça va bien, merci.
Que tu pourrais demander à quelqu'un d'autre dans la classe, Bella, mais peut-être à Félix, s'il nous entend.
Félix, comment ça va?
So, can you hear us, Félix? Est-ce que tu nous entends? Well, we'll skip Felix for now. Can you ask someone else in the class? So
Loga, comment ça va?
Ça va? Toi, ça va?
ok, Loga, est-ce que tu peux demander à quelqu'un d'autre dans la classe?
Alma, toi, ça va?
Oui, ça va bien, merci. Chiara, ça va?
Ça va très bien, merci. Is anyone left?
Oui, Donna.
Comment ça va, Donna?
Oui, très bien, merci.
Super. And I think that it's all, I think. If someone has
Is
a bit,
anybody left?
yeah, I don't think that anyone's left. Okay. Très bien, bah, super. Okay, so that's good that most of you are doing great. Okay, so if you're doing great, it will be positive for the class. Okay. So we're going to talk about what we did last time. So to kind of do an introduction about les vacances et les voyages, we talked about les transports. Donc on a parlé des transports, ok? On a pris l'exemple, so we took the example of, for example, well, la voiture, the bus, okay? So we talked about if that specific word was either masculine or feminine. But something that was also important was to use those words in the context of sentences, okay? In that case, we either use the verb faire ou prendre, okay? So in that case, we should take a look at the images that you have on the screen right now. So, faire ou prendre. Le premier exemple, so the first example is le métro, okay? So, on sait que le métro, c'est masculin, ok? C'est masculin parce qu'on a le. Et est-ce qu'on dit faire ou prendre? Est-ce qu'on utilise faire ou prendre? Does anybody like understand the question here? So,
Prendre.
Yeah, prendre.
prendre. Donc, la phrase en entière, ce serait quoi? What would be the whole sentence here?
Je prends le métro.
Je prends le métro, très bien, oui. OK. Donc, on a un bon exemple de je prends le métro, OK. So, now that so Nora and Joanna, you said like je prends, okay? So was it the spelling that you expected here?
No, I thought maybe it would have no S.
So that's a difference from, well, the first type verb that we saw, which at the first person of the singular doesn't take an S, okay? So that's a bit tricky here. We can like complete the conjugation table here. So we know that for the first person, it would take an S, which is kind of counterintuitive because the S in French is most likely the mark of the plural or the second person. So for example, tu always takes an S when you conjugate verbs, okay? So does anybody want to give it a try for the rest of the table here? Someone who would be courageous enough to take on that lead. So what would you say? Il, elle.
Prendre.
So what did you say?
It's prendre, but no S.
No S. On prononcerait, so we would pronunciate it like elle prend. The
Okay.
D is mute here, okay?
Okay.
So here the absence of S is also a mark of the third person singular, okay? Donc très bien, pour l'instant, je prends, tu prends, elle prend, same pronunciation. And what else? So for the next persons, maybe, okay, Felix. So nous prenons, okay. Maybe Felix, you have the rest after nous prenons, prenez, ok, très bien. Et la suite, la dernière. Une idée, Félix, peut-être? Ou quelqu'un d'autre dans le groupe? So it's close enough. It's not prem, so it's still the same thing as prennent, okay? Ils, elles prennent, okay? So last time we talked about the first group, okay? We kind of said that there was a specific strategy when it comes to conjugating verbs in French. For example, it was to identify the root. So technically, the root of the verb would be here, okay? Prend. And basically, you just have to throw the endings, the same pattern. So for the third person group, it would be S, S, and no S. However, it kind of drastically changes because at the plural, you don't have the D anymore. So that's why we call the third group the irregular group, because there's many irregularities in the way you would conjugate those verbs. We can do the same thing here with, for example, faire. What would be the conjugation here? Involontaire, peut-être. Je
Fais.
fais. Okay. And what about the spelling?
F-A-I-S.
F-A-I-S, très bien, oui. Ensuite, c'est la même chose. Fait, ok. Et pour la troisième personne, il, elle fait. Qu'est-ce qu'on aurait? So what
Is-
would we have here?
Is it Fay but F-A-I-T?
F-A-I-T, oui, très bien. Il, elle fait. So you can see that even though like prendre et faire are in the same group, they don't conjugate the same way, okay? Prend doesn't take a T at the end. It takes nothing. Here, there's the T. And for the rest of the person, so starting with the plural. Une idée peut-être, nous
Faisons.
faisons, oui, très bien. F-A-I-S-O-N-S. Et ensuite, c'est la même chose. Il, vous,
Faisait.
et non. C'est un piège. Vous
Ah,
faites.
fait.
Ok. Et la dernière, ils, elles font. So, when you kind of look at the table of conjugation here with the verb faire, you can see that it's really irregular. As you can see, you would kind of expect it to be vous faisiez. However, it's vous faites, okay? And same thing here. It could be like il, elle fais. However, it's font, okay? So, same thing with, for example, the irregular verbs in English. There's no specific method to understand and really memorize how to use them and conjugate them. It's just something that you have to get accustomed to with, well, practicing. So, pour la première, on a fait je prends le métro. Et pour la trottinette, est-ce qu'on utilise faire ou prendre? Ou should we use faire ou prendre?
Is it prendre?
Prendre. Et donc, ce serait quoi la phrase ici?
Je prends la trottinette.
Je prends la trottinette. So we saw here that, for example, we would say prendre, for example,
Yeah.
for something that you don't have the control of. Like, for example,
Okay.
bus, le bus, le métro. So, les transports en commun. Here you would most likely say faire.
Okay.
Donc, ce serait par exemple, je fais de la trottinette, ok?
Yeah. In English, I would say I take the scooter. So
Okay.
that's
Well,
why I think prendre. So obviously it's a little irregular.
yeah. So there's some differences in the way you would structure things between French and English, obviously. And something important here is de la. So it's something that we saw when we talked about hobbies in general. For example, with the verb faire, okay? Faire is often followed by de, okay? So it's very important. you wouldn't say je fais la trottinette. It would be like if I translate it into English, it would be like I make the scooter. Here it's you're doing, well, or you're riding the scooter, okay? Any question about that for now? Des questions? Pas de questions? Non. Okay, great. Then we talked about le verbe aller, okay? So we're back with the first type group, okay? However, for those of you who are in class on Tuesday, do you remember what we said about le verbe aller? Because there was something that was very specific about the verb aller.
Was it that it's supposed to belong in the first group, but it's the only one that differs because, yeah, like it should be because it ends in ER, but it's not.
Oui, très bien, Cara. Effectivement. So you would think like for the first type group that it's something that is very regular, as we have established before. For example, with the root, okay, so we have the ER, okay, so we split the verb in half. And you would say like je al, okay, tu al, etc. However, that is not the case here. It is the only or one of the only irregular verbs that belong in the first type group. So maybe those of you who are in class, can you try to conjugate the verb if you have already encountered it? So you start with je vais. About this spelling, so how would you spell that?
V-A-I-S.
V-A-I-S, ok. Je vais. La suite, c'est tu.
Tu vas.
Tu vas. Avec un S, ok. Il, elle,
Va.
va, ok. Et then, like the third group, so it kind of really starts going somewhere else. Nous
Allons.
allons, ouais. Ok. Vous
Allez.
allez. And the end would be
Is it va? Va?
vont. Oui, très bien, super, super Nora. Ils, elles vont. Okay. So here what we can see is that it's the only verb or one of the only verbs in the first group that is very irregular. Okay. So one of the most irregular verbs. The only persons that follow the same pattern as we have established before are the first two of the plural. Okay. And the rest are all irregular. Okay. Something that we started to talk about also was the preposition à la, okay, au and au. So here we have three images. I assume that most of you recognize the place or the thing that we want to talk about, okay? C'est quoi la première ici? Il y a deux possibilités.
Le café?
Le café, oui, ou le restaurant, ok? Donc, Johanna, qu'est-ce que tu dirais par exemple? So we want to use le verbe aller. So how would you say that? Well, you're going to le café.
Je vais le café? Non.
So you would use that preposition here. Au.
Ah, je vais au café.
Okay. Because to sum it up, au is kind of a contraction of alle. Alla is feminine. Alle or au is the masculine. Okay. So you kind of have to think about that. Ok, donc je vais au café, je vais au restaurant, ok. Pour le deuxième, tout le monde reconnaît. Ici, c'est quoi?
Arc de Triomphe.
Ok, donc c'est l'Arc de Triomphe et l'avenue. So the avenue, do you remember the name?
Champs-Élysées.
Les Champs-Élysées, ok. Donc Nora, tu dirais quoi pour la phrase?
Je vais à la Champs-Élysées.
So is it singular or
Aux Champs-Élysées.
aux Champs-Élysées? But which au?
The
Lequel?
plural.
Celui-ci.
AUX. Is it?
AUX, oui, puisque c'est pluriel. Because it's plural, you would use this one. This one is either masculine or feminine, because as we've told previously, like the plural is neutral and masculine. Ok, donc je vais aux Champs-Élysées, très bien. Et le dernier ici, celui-ci. So what place is that?
Gare Montparnasse.
La gare Montparnasse, ok. So we're going to try with somebody else. Maybe Donna, you want to try? So what would you say with the whole sentence?
I'm
Using,
really lost with that because I missed two of the classes.
yeah.
Last two classes. Both.
Okay.
I missed both. So I'm really lost.
So we're trying to make a sentence with le verbe aller. Okay.
And can you tell me what it is? Like,
So le verbe aller is to go. Okay.
oh,
So we want to use that sentence to say, like, for example, with that image, I want to go to the train station. Okay. So here the train station would be said la gare. In that case,
Mhm.
we have la gare Montparnasse, which is a train station in Paris. Okay. So which preposition would you use in a sentence? Would you say je vais à la gare, je vais au gare, je vais au gare?
je vais au gare because it's plural.
So it's singular here.
Oh, so AU.
It's not a u, it's the first one, the feminine one, à la, okay?
Okay.
Because gare is a feminine noun, okay? So
Okay.
you would
So
say,
je vais à la gare.
je vais à la gare, très bien, oui.
Okay.
Okay, because
Thank you.
gare est féminin. No reason behind that, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, one last thing that we talked about was le futur proche. Okay, so there's a thing in French where you can talk about the future event using the present tense, but it's very, you wouldn't say really special, but it has to be under certain conditions, okay? So you have to use le verbe aller, okay? For those of you who were in class on Tuesday, can you maybe remind the class of how you can use le verbe aller pour faire une phrase au futur?
Do we use aller followed by an infinitive?
Oui, très bien, Alma. Donc, for example, like just before, we saw maybe the verb prendre, okay? Prendre ici est infinitif. Prendre is like the infinitive version of the verb, okay? So if you were to say like something that is going to happen in the future, perhaps maybe like I'm going to take the train in 2 hours, okay? So that's, you would use le futur proche. Donc, here is the structure that you would follow to use the futur proche. Donc, on a le sujet, une personne, je, par exemple, ok? Le verbe aller. So you have the table of conjugation here. And un verbe à l'infinitif. Donc, le verbe à l'infinitif, par exemple, c'est ce qu'on a vu, prendre, faire, aller, etc. Okay. Does it seem clear to those of you who weren't here in class? So it's kind of similar with, for example, be going to, except it's a little bit lighter, as you would have to only use the infinitive version of a verb to, well, talk in the future tense, okay? Be mindful also that there's a proper tense to, well, a proper future tense. However, it comes a little bit later on because it's a bit harder, okay?
Can I ask,
Oui.
what are the conditions when you can use the future proche?
So, you would use the futur proche if it's like the same thing as be going to. If it's something that is kind of prepared or that you expect to happen at a certain point in time. For example, like an appointment somewhere, a meeting, okay, or something that is very imminent. If it's something that is much later in time that you can't really situate, you would use the normal future tense in French. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you very much.
Brilliant, super. Okay, but so Donna, you weren't there for last time class, so maybe could you try to make a sentence with le futur proche?
Can you tell me also another thing, which is a pond and what was that? Fey. Can you tell me this translation for it?
So prendre, we talked about it, is take.
Sorry?
Take, the verb take.
Okay, take and faire.
Faire is do. To do.
Oh, to do and okay. Okay.
Mhm. Donc,
So, come parler au futur proche?
so
It means what? Future proche.
futur proche is the close future.
Ah, proche, yeah, it's I see that on
Proche,
trains.
yeah. Mhm.
Proche or something, yeah.
So could
So,
you try maybe to make a sentence, Ben? You have the table of conjugation here to help yourself.
okay. Je vais. So I take. Is that what I'm saying? No.
If you
Je
say
vais.
je vais,
Jouer is what is the pronunciation? I mean, sorry, what is the translation for way?
excuse me, I didn't understand.
What is this? What am I saying if I'm saying je vais? When I'm saying je vais?
So if you simply say je vais, you're saying
Yeah.
I go or
Oh,
I
okay.
am going. However,
Okay.
if the verb aller is followed then by an infinitive verb, you would be
Yeah.
talking in the future tense. For example, if you say je vais prendre le bus, you're saying,
I'm
well,
going to take the bus.
I am going to take the bus, which is in a future tense. So if you say just je vais, you would be
Yeah.
saying I go here.
Uh-huh.
With the verb infinitive, you would be at the future tense. So again, be mindful of using like the infinitive version of those verbs.
Okay. I'm a little lost because I've not been in touch with the class at all for the last
Yeah,
2
don't worry about it. C'est pas très grave. Tu veux essayer? Could you maybe try if you want to?
Sorry, come again?
So do you want to try to make a sentence with like the
Yeah, I could, but it could be horrible, but I will try. Je vais f- I don't understand. Je vais
so
future pursuit. What?
so you have to use after je vais, you have to use a infinitive verb. So for example, you could say je vais aller, or you could say je vais prendre, je vais faire, je vais manger. whatever
Oh,
verb you
okay.
want to use.
So je vais manger. So
For
I'm
example.
eating. I'm going to eat or something like that, right?
Très bien, oui, super.
Okay.
Des questions pour les autres? Anybody has a question about the futur proche? No question? Okay. So that's something that we're still going to be using, so don't worry about that. Okay, très bien. Alors, so back to vacances et voyages. So does everybody understand what's vacances et voyages? The vocabulary.
No.
Alors, vacances et voyages, so this kind of a synonym in some ways. It's like vacances is vacation or holiday,
Mm-hmm.
and voyage is traveling. Okay.
Oh, okay. So it's quite close to what it means in English.
Sort of. Well, in English, you would also say, for example, voyage.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
same thing
Sorry.
in French. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so we're going to watch a video. We're going to talk about some cliches, okay? So that's a French word, but also an English word. So I assume that most of you understand cliche, okay? We're going to talk, because there's a lot of diversity in this class, we're going to be able to talk about, for example, the cliches you have about your country. I think that something that's really sort of typical French, or about learning French, or about the image of French persons and France in general, is that there comes a lot of stereotypes or cliches with France and French. I assume that most of you know a bit about some cliches. Some of you may have encountered some real cliches when you came to France or when you just live in France, okay? So we're going to watch a video for about a minute and a half, okay? And we're going to try to talk about it, okay? Again, we won't need any like real sentences. You can just use keywords in French, okay? So I'm going to display the video. It's a video with no sound, so no content or no linguistic content. It's just to kind of start a discussion, okay? Okay, so Felix, there wasn't any sound in the video. It's just to kind of be a conversation like starter. So nothing special about it. Okay. So c'est quoi? Qu'est-ce que vous avez vu? La vidéo, elle parle de quoi? De quoi parle la vidéo? Anyone want to speak up and bring an answer?
Pour Irlande, Guinness.
Guinness, ok. Donc en Irlande, c'est la Guinness, ouais.
Mm, maybe Shamrock.
Alors, Shamrock, c'est un trèfle, ok.
Okay.
Un trèfle. So I assume that most of your or like I'm speaking up to the whole class, I assume that most of your um most of your motivation to learn English is to so some of you are in France for working, studying, or just like doing something special. So I assume that most of your motivations here are to kind of experience traveling and discovering stuff. So cliches are something that you kind of make up when not really fantasizing, but thinking about the country, for example. En France, so in France, we have many cliches. There's a few examples here. La baguette, okay. Le béret, le fromage, etc. Le vin, what else could you say? Maybe like attitude, yeah. So bad attitude. That would be something that is very commonly said about French people in France in general. So does anyone want to maybe like talk about the cliches in their countries? So maybe Joanna, avec le Canada, quels sont les clichés du Canada?
That we eat maple syrup and pancakes.
Okay, so you don't eat maple syrup and pancakes?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
So maple syrup is le sirop d'érable, ok? Donc tu manges pas de sirop d'érable avec... Enfin, tu manges, mais c'est un cliché, ok?
And that all Canadians do winter sports.
Ok, donc pas de sport d'hiver.
Yeah.
Ok. D'autres clichés, non?
I think that's a cliche. Oui.
Ok, super. Daphne, pour l'Angleterre.
The video showed him packing an umbrella.
Ok,
It's very typical. It's always raining. It's raining now.
ok, super.
Tea, that's the biggest one. Everyone drinks tea, and people think it's a cliche, but we do care about it, which is a bit embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, I assume that some countries have like you can say like better cliches, which are less offensive or embarrassing. Well, we're not trying to like be stereotypical. It's just like in a light-hearted thing because I assume that most people make fun of French people as I do myself. Okay, so don't worry about it, the cliches for France. You can speak up about it. It's fine. I think that well, I also think that French people have a very bad attitude. They're not really like the nicest of all people. So that's okay. Donna, pour toi, ce serait quoi les clichés?
That Indians only eat spicy food.
Ok. Donc spicy, c'est épicé, ok.
Épicé, okay.
D'autres clichés peut-être?
Sorry?
Do you have any other clichés to share maybe?
That we have a language called Indian
Mm.
because we don't have a language called Indian.
Okay, so it's much more complicated than that. Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
great. Chiara, sur l'Australie, c'est quoi les clichés?
That we can all surf. That I
Yeah.
have actually genuinely been asked this if I used to ride a kangaroo to school, which I thought was quite intriguing.
Okay.
So I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with being good with dangerous animals. I think a lot of people are constantly wary of that. And that we barbecue a lot. But I think
Okay,
live up to that reputation.
so that's one of the true reputations with the barbecue thing.
Yeah.
Ok, très bien. Pour toi, Bella, alors je me souviens plus d'où tu viens, Bella. Peut-être que tu as d'autres clichés à nous partager. Do you have any clichés to share with us, Bella? Not sure that you can hear us. Helma, I think that you're from Australia too, so am I correct?
No.
No, you're not.
I'm from England.
England, so
Yeah.
well, that's a repetition with Baffin, so
Great.
il pleut toujours, etc. Ok, très bien. Merci à toutes et tous. Ok. Felix, if you want to type in the chat what are the common misconceptions and cliches about your country, you can share them in the chat. Okay. Très bien, super, merci. So we're going to go back to the theme of this part, so about the suitcase. Okay. We're going to again talk about another verb of the third group. So here, mettre. Okay. Does anybody know what mettre means? So not mettre like that. That is a meter, okay? But this one, mettre.
Does it mean to put?
To put, yeah. So to put. So it's either to put, or you can also use it in some cases to say like wear something. Okay, donc mettre. This one is much more regular than the verbs we've seen today. So for example, with faire. So like kind of in case of Felix, we are proud people. Okay. That's a pretty good cliche, I'd say. So le verbe mettre is from the third group. Okay, c'est du troisième groupe. Okay. Donc, so we saw a bit earlier about the conjugation of the third group that you can't rely much on the root of the verb. Okay, so you can take that method to conjugate a verb. However, here it's a bit different because mettre follows something that is very similar. It follows a pattern that is common about the third group. Okay, so here we kind of have a root, okay, and then it sort of follows it. Okay. Early you would hear the difference between je mets et mettons. What's important here is that there's the double consonant because you can hear the T. Okay. So here you can see on the table that it's much more regular than the other verbs we've seen from the third group. Okay.
Can I just check? Did you just say that it's because of the double T that we pronounce the sound T, but when it's single T, you don't?
So it's much more complicated than that. In that case, we have a double T when it's between, where a consonant is between two vowels. So there's yeah, something that is to talk about. So there's a rule about the double consonant in English because of like the diphthong. Do you say diphthong in English? I'm not sure. No, so for example, a vowel can make two sounds in English, a or a, okay? We take that letter, for example. So you have to sometimes put double consonant to make a modified sound, like for example, to keep the a, okay? Here, a vowel in English or in French is only making a single sound, e, makes the sound E. However, it can make different sounds if it's coupled with other letters. But a vowel in itself can only make one sound, okay? So the double consonant isn't about making a specific sound with the vowel. It's just that we can't have a single consonant between a vowel and another. So in that case, we have the double T, okay? Double T here, double T. Okay? Does it seem understandable to you? In most cases, the T at the end of words isn't where it's mute, okay? Because, well, a consonant alone can't make a sound. So like there has to be, like, for example, another vowel to make a sound. So that's why most final letters in French are mute, okay? You can see that there's many mute letters here, okay?
And that's the rule always. A consonant by itself can't make a sound.
So a consonant by itself, so for example, you will only encounter them
Yeah.
when they're at the ends of words. So for example, here, because there's nothing behind them, they're
Yeah.
not going to make any sound, yeah.
Okay.
However, they're always like with another vowel if they're in the middle of words. So yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
no problem. So that's something that has to be kept in mind, is like the mute sounds. Okay, so you can see that, for example, for the verb mettre, the T isn't silent, but for example, where there's another consonant or another vowel after the consonant here. Okay. Donc, ce qu'on va faire maintenant, so what we're going to do now is play a game. Okay, so it's called Dans ma valise. I'm not sure that it's, so there's probably an equivalent in English, or that must be written or called a different way. Maybe it's called In My Suitcase. I'm not sure. Does it exist in the, well, the English world? In My Suitcase, is that a thing or not? Nope, it's not a thing. Okay, so basically, Dans ma valise, or In My Suitcase, is a game like of repetition. So one starts by saying Dans ma valise, and he adds a word or something. For example, Dans ma valise, I have a t-shirt, for example. The other person has to say the same sentence. So, dans ma valise, je mets un t-shirt. And then he has to add another thing behind. And then the other person has to say the two other things, etc., etc. So it kind of goes on and on until one can't or didn't understand or didn't listen to what the other is saying, so the game ends there. So we're going to play that game. However, we have learned about the verb mettre, so the verb to put, okay? And we're going to try to specifically talk about the vocabulary of les vêtements, okay? So les vêtements, does everybody understand what's les vêtements?
Can you tell me?
Les
Les
vêtements, so what would you find in most suitcases? Clothes.
Yeah.
Les vêtements, clothes, okay? So if you don't have the vocabulary, that's okay. You can just ask what you want to say in French, okay? Keep in mind that most or some words regarding clothes are transparent in English and French, okay? Donc, so does everybody understand the basic rule of the game? Yeah. Okay. So keep in mind that Felix is so Felix. It will be hard for you to play since you don't have your microphone on since you're at work. So you can try to follow with us, okay? So I'm not sure how you view the pictures of the class, okay? But so for me, it's like Joanna is after me, then there's Bethan, there's Nora, then there's Donna, Bella, Chiara, etc. Okay, so I'll start, okay? And then Joanna will be next. Yeah, no problem. So Chiara isn't there, so Alma, you're be so are you staying for the game or are you going now, Chiara? Okay, so no problem. So basically the game Dans ma valise, or in my suitcase, is just a game of repetition where the first person starts to say Dans ma valise, je mets, and then you have to say like a word that is used in the vocabulary of the clothes in French, okay? No problem, Alma. So Alma won't be there for the game, no problem. So for Chiara, so for example, I take the example, I say, dans ma valise, je mets un t-shirt. Then Joanna has to say, dans ma valise, je mets un t-shirt, and she has to add another item. And then Bethan has to say the two items and then add another, etc., etc. Okay? Does that seem clear to you, Chiara?
Yeah, thank you. Merci beaucoup.
De rien. Okay, on commence. Alors, so I want you to use the verb mettre. So you would say je mets, okay? Donc, dans ma valise, je mets un pull, okay?
Dans ma valise, oh, can I go?
Mhm.
Yes. Dans ma valise, je mets un pull et la chemise.
Et la chemise, très bien. À Bethan,
Dans ma valise et un t-shirt, un pull, un chemise et un t-shirt.
okay. So there was one joker, at least, so you used your bonus at least. Okay, Nora?
Dans ma valise, je mets un pull, la chemise, un t-shirt et une robe.
Une robe, très bien. À toi, Donna. Donna, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry, I was speaking on mute.
No problem.
Dans ma valise, je mets how do you say shoes?
So you have to start like everything we've said so far. Donc, moi,
Oh
je-
shit.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention. I didn't understand.
Well,
So
the
listening
game
to
comes
somebody
to
else
an
in the
end.
background.
It's okay. It's fine. So how would you say shoes? It's chaussures. Okay.
Shoes, sir. So I
Chaussures.
think somebody said dans ma valise, je mets chemise
Il y avait une chemise, oui.
and shoes, sir. I don't remember the first one.
Chaussures. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the game comes to an end. Sorry for the ones who can participate. So does like the rules seem clear to you, at least for all of the class? Do you understand the rules of that game?
Just as like
Oui.
a grammar thing, would you say dans ma valise first and then je mets?
So whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can say either je mets dans ma valise un t-shirt, or you can say dans ma valise je mets un t-shirt.
Okay.
Doesn't really matter. In that case, you would most likely use the structure of je mets dans ma valise. However, it's kind of the gimmick of the game is to repeat and start with dans ma valise.
Okay.
So either way, it's correct. Okay. Très bien. Ok. Pas de questions. Le vocabulaire de vêtements, ça vous parle toujours un peu. So, okay. I don't think that we have time for a pause, so I think that if everybody is all right, we'll skip it. Okay. Is everybody all right with not doing a pause? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Donc, on continue avec la troisième partie, partir en voyage. Ça veut dire quoi partir en voyage? Donc, voyage is a word that we've seen, okay? So be mindful that voyage isn't the same meaning as in English, where voyage is kind of the trip to go somewhere. So like, for example, a boat ride would be called a voyage, okay? I think so. Not sure. But a voyage in French is like the whole trip, okay? Donc, qu'est-ce que ça voudrait dire partir en voyage? So what would that mean, partir en voyage?
Partir, to leave.
Partir, c'est to leave, oui. Et donc, je pars en voyage. Donc, I'm leaving for a trip, for example, okay?
Departure also means the same thing.
Excuse me, partir means leaving, yeah.
Yeah, but departure.
Départer. Départ. So
Yeah.
départ is start. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
not the same thing. No,
Okay.
no problem. Okay, alors, on va parler un peu de grammaire. So we're going to talk about specific things in grammar that make French a little bit hard, okay? When we say, or if we had to simplify things in English, for example, which preposition would you use here with like behind the verb to go? You would use to, always, because like the verbs of movement are attached with the preposition to. However, it's absolutely not the same thing. De rien, Alma, on se voit mardi.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, Alma. So it's absolutely not the same thing here. So what we have to pay attention to is, once again, because English is ruled by the feminine, or like you would say the gender and number rules. Here, what we have to pay attention to is the gender of the word that is going to be followed by, and also the number, okay? However, there's something that is a bit easier, is that avec les villes, okay, so does everybody understand the word les villes? Pas de souci, les villes? C'est quoi les villes alors?
A city?
Cities, okay. So for cities, pour les villes, on utilise a. Par exemple, there's an example of a sentence here. Je vais aller à Paris ce week-end. So for every cities, you would say a. Okay. Here again, you can see what tense are we using here is the futur proche. Okay. Mais en revanche, so we have cities. It's fairly simple. We use the preposition a, either if it's masculine or feminine. However, with les pays, c'est quoi les pays?
Country?
Countries, okay. Merci Joanna et Nora. Les pays, the countries, we have to pay attention to the gender and the number. It's going to be very important, because if we take the example of la France is is feminine, la France, okay? We use the preposition en, okay? Un exemple de phrase, elle habite en France. if we take another example of another country that isn't feminine, for example, Mexique. Mexique is kind of the same thing as in English, okay? Mexico. Le Mexique est masculin. So we don't use en, we use o. Okay? And then the last rule, so for the plural, if it's feminine or masculine, you would use o with an X because remember, the X is a mark of the plural. Okay? So for example, il travaille aux Pays-Bas. Pays-Bas is the Netherlands, okay? So does everybody understand those rules here? Okay? So it's going to be very specific. You have to keep in mind here that for the cities, we don't really care. For example, in French, most of the cities are considered feminine, okay? No special reason for that. And the countries are different, so you have to pay attention to that, okay? You can see here that I've kind of listed some examples here. For example, we have Afrique. Okay, so for example, here it's continent. So the rule is the same with continents and countries. So en Afrique, en Chine, okay? Those are countries and continents, so it's the same thing. It's always the same rule, okay? Same thing, for example, Japon, Portugal, États-Unis, Philippines. So what you have to pay attention, for example, if you want to know if it's plural or not, is the S here. Okay. So with the time that we have, we can do a little exercise here to kind of get it going, to get some exercise going in order to understand better and to better identify the gender in the numbers of countries. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So for an exercise that we're going to do, okay? So can everybody see the screen that I'm displaying right now? Oui, ok.
Yeah, oui.
Donc on a des pays, on a des villes, ok? Et on a en bleu les prépositions. Donc, on va essayer de réfléchir. So we're going to think about it for a moment. And when somebody is kind of, we'll do one by one. So, for example, Joanna, what preposition would you, for example, would you link with a country or a city?
Au Canada,
Au Canada, avec un X ou sans X?
sans X.
Sans X, oui, très bien. C'est singulier. On dit le Canada. C'est masculin. OK? Bethan,
La France.
la France. Alors, quelle préposition on utiliserait ici? Which preposition would you use?
The A, the accent.
So the A with an accent is for cities, okay?
Ah, okay. À Paris.
So for example, à Paris. Très bien. OK. Super. Nora, t'associerais lesquels?
En France,
En France, par exemple, oui. Okay. So you can see, Bethan, that we have en for feminine countries. Okay. Felix Nino, you can type one answer in the chat if you would like. Donna, on associerait lequel?
I'm just gonna cheat because I just saw it before. It's en Italie.
En Italie. Très bien, oui. Italy is a feminine country. Alors, Félix Nino aux Émirats, oui. Alors, c'est bien, on aura le pluriel, si je le retrouve. So there's, ça arrive, hop, aux Émirats, ok. Très bien. Bella, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oui,
Aux États-Unis.
aux États-Unis, alors, très bien. C'est pluriel. Donc, on dirait aux États-Unis. Loga à Lyon, super. Lyon se situe où? So where is Lyon located? Does anybody know?
Sud.
Dans le sud, oui. Quel pays?
En France.
En France, oui, très bien. Super. Et on va finir avec Chiara. Alors, il reste Sarajevo, Maroc, Bosnie. Alors, quelle est la proposition qu'on pourrait utiliser ici?
Would it be Sarajevo?
Sarajevo, oui, très bien. Super. À Sarajevo. À Sarajevo, c'est une ville. So, what you have to keep in mind with that exercise here, I'll finish the other ones, is that you have to be specific about certain words. For example, for cities, it's a rule that you have to say ah with the accent. For countries, it depends on, well, the gender and the numbers, okay? Tout le monde comprend, so everybody understand that notion here? Okay. So the preposition is something that is kind of painful to learn because there are so many in French, and it is not as straightforward as you would see in English, for example. Okay. Donc, ce qu'on va faire maintenant. So now what we are going to do is that we're going to use the futur proche, okay? On va utiliser le futur proche. So there's the reminder that we saw for something that you have to memorize. So we saw that last time. It's about the rule of the futur proche, okay? Here you have several infinitive verb, okay? So for example, you have partir, you have aller, you have porter, you have prendre, okay? Does anybody know another infinitive verb that they want to share with the class?
Manger.
Manger, par exemple, très bien, super, je l'ajoute. Manger. Quelqu'un a une autre idée, peut-être? Alors, dans le chat, alors, bois is not a infinitive, it would be boire, but I can add that, okay? Felix, you said penser, super. So does everybody know what's boire? Nope, boire is drinking, okay? And penser is thinking. So thanks for your additions, Loga and Felix. Okay. No other suggestions of other infinitive verb? Maybe some that we saw before in the class?
Faire.
Excuse me?
Faire.
Faire? Oui, très bien. On a vu aujourd'hui. Faire, par exemple. Ok. On va garder tout ça. So here you have several sentences which are starting with, well, with the verb aller. And why do they have the verb aller? Is because, well, they're going to be in the futur proche, okay? So what you have to do here is try to make some sentences with the futur proche. So you have that kind of model that you can use to talk about maybe your travel projects, okay? So For example, if you have an idea if we're going this summer or later in the year, you can share that with us, okay? So does anybody or does everybody understand the 4 sentences here? Yeah, je vais partir pour mes vacances. Does it seem understood? Je vais aller à... Pas de questions? No questions? Okay, so keep in mind that it can either be a, or if it's a city, but it can also be a country, so it can be en, au, okay? Donc on va commencer avec toi, Donna, par exemple. So we're going to start with you. Can you try to make a sentence while following one of the model here? For example, je vais aller à...
Je vais aller à euh, euh, Paris.
Paris, très bien. Une ville. Super, ok, je vais aller à Paris. Ensuite, Johanna, peut-être. Est-ce que tu veux suivre une autre phrase, peut-être?
Je vais porter.
Partir. So keep in mind, yeah.
Oh, porter
Partir.
below.
Mhm.
Ok, je vais partir pour mes vacances
Ok.
au Canada.
Au Canada, super. Ok. Une autre suggestion? Un autre volontaire ou une autre volontaire? Peut-être Cara, tu veux essayer de faire une phrase?
Je vais aller en Italie en août.
Super. Je vais aller en Italie en août. Okay. So that's another example of what we would use as a preposition. So en is like the equivalent of to in that sentence. Je vais aller en Italie, but it's also in. Okay. Je vais aller en août, or je vais aller en Italie en août. Okay. So keep in mind that the prepositions don't have the same translations, even though they keep like they're still the same. En can mean to, it can mean in, okay? Félix Nino is saying in the chat, je vais partir pour mes vacances. Alors, tu dirais, you would say en Corse and not à Corse, because La Corse isn't a city, it's, well, an island. So you would use en. Très bien, super. Any question about the, well, futur proche here and its use? No? Everything seems understood. Okay. So we're going to finish off by talking about, well, la francophonie. Johanna, tu as dit que tu savais ce que c'était la francophonie. C'est quoi la francophonie?
I think it's like a French speaker.
Ça, c'est un francophone.
Francophone, yeah, that's all I know.
Oui. Alors, on va essayer de regarder une vidéo. Alors, there's sound. We're going to watch a video. It's kind of talking about the francophonie. So keep in mind that la francophonie is kind of a concept. It is something that is very kind of free in some ways. So we're going to watch a video and then we're going to try to discuss about what's la francophonie and we're going to try to define what it is. Okay. So there's sound.
Ça veut dire
Can you hear the sound in the video?
quoi ça? Pourquoi c'est comme
Yeah.
Oui, oui.
So it's about a minute and a half. So I'll let you watch the video here.
C'est ailleurs dans le monde. Oui, imagine, il y a 67 millions de Français et 274 millions de francophones, des personnes qui parlent français sans forcément être français. La langue française arrive à la 5e place mondiale derrière le chinois, l'anglais, l'espagnol, l'arabe et l'hindi. C'est aussi la 3e langue parlée par les hommes d'affaires dans le monde et la 4e langue utilisée sur Internet. C'est l'histoire qui explique cette influence. Par le passé, la France a conquis et colonisé de vastes territoires où l'on continue de parler le français. Et cette influence n'est pas prête de s'arrêter. En 2060, les francophones devraient être 445 millions de plus. La raison de cette progression? L'Afrique. Ce continent abrite aujourd'hui la moitié des francophones. Or, selon les experts, les Africains seront bientôt 4 fois plus nombreux, multipliant le nombre de francophones. Le français deviendrait alors l'une des toutes premières langues parlées dans le monde. C'est une bonne nouvelle pour la France, car une langue ne sert pas seulement à communiquer, elle transmet aussi les valeurs et la culture du pays où elle est née. C'est également bon pour les affaires, car plus on parle de français dans un pays, plus on y vend de produits français. Mais attention à ne pas gâcher cette chance, car le français subit de plus en plus la concurrence d'autres langues. Alors, que faire? Développer l'apprentissage du français en ouvrant des écoles à l'étranger? Ou encore soutenir les médias francophones qui font entendre notre langue partout dans le monde?
Okay. So the vocabulary and all the lexicon of that video was kind of hard. It was a bit fast, okay? But did some of you get what's la francophonie? Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Is it a French speaker outside of France?
So that's un francophone. Un francophone, c'est quelqu'un qui parle français hors de la France ou même dans la France. So for example, I would be considered a francophone because I speak French. But the francophonie is kind of a wider term. So it's not to talk about a speaker in general. Did somebody else get it?
Is it other countries that speak French?
So it's it can be countries, but also like communities in general. So for example, like it can be a country that has French as one of their official languages, but it also can be just like a certain part of a country that has a French speaking community. Donc la francophonie is kind of a wide term to talk about like the French speaking world, because French isn't just about France. What other informations did you get in the video? Quelles sont les autres informations à noter dans la vidéo?
In 2060, there'll be 445 million French speakers in the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think it said something about the the number is growing the most in the African countries, maybe.
Oui, très bien. C'est super, super, ouais. So basically, like, so the numbers of francophone here, so French speakers, are rapidly growing, especially if you like project about like the African continent that has a much more a much bigger demographic boom, as most northern countries tend to kind of slow down, especially France. So in 2060, there will be like 445 millions de francophones dans le monde. Johanna, peut-être que tu peux nous en parler, par exemple, de la francophonie. So maybe you can talk about the francophonie since you've kind of been more into contact with the francophonie.
Yeah, Canada is a francophonie, but mostly in Quebec, that
Yeah.
area of Canada.
So the Quebec is like one of the best example of the francophonie. So like a foreign territory that has French listed as one of their official languages. So this kind of discussion is about to talk about like French outside of France, because we tend to focus like or even like just not on the country of France, but more specifically on the city of Paris. However, French is much much wider, like it's present in, well, many countries in the world for obvious and very sad reasons, okay? So this is something that has to be kept in mind, okay? So what I wanted to finish with was to kind of create a interactive map of the francophonie. Okay, so notre carte du monde francophone. Does anybody or does everybody understand what's a carte? Une carte, it's a map, okay? Donc le monde, does everybody understand the word monde? The world, okay, est francophone. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen on that window here. Talk about the the francophone world, okay? Okay, so does everybody can see the screen here? Yeah, okay, so there's a world map, okay? So I've already listed a few countries which were well, part of the francophonie. Donc on a la Côte d'Ivoire, on a l'Algérie, on a des pays qui sont un peu plus proches de la France comme le Luxembourg et aussi la Belgique, okay? Does anybody want to kind of give another or want to list another country that would be part of the francophonie?
Canada.
Canada, oui. Donc, so we have examples of sentences here with
Okay.
starting with the preposition au Luxembourg, on parle français. So here I can add a little pin here for Canada. So what would you say here?
Au Canada and parle français.
Au Canada, on parle français. Très bien. Okay. Oh yeah, another thing that we have talked about, that little thing under the sea here. We haven't. So it's called le CCD. So it's basically to make the C sound like an S. So that's why we say français. Okay? Donc on a le Canada. Super. Une autre idée peut-être? So which other country or part of the world is French speaking?
Monaco?
Oui, alors Morocco is le Maroc. Okay. Donc le Maroc. So what would you say as a sentence?
Oh,
So-
Maroc. Appelé français.
what did you say again?
I think it's a masculine country.
Yes, it's a masculine country, yeah.
Is it the AUA? I can't differentiate.
Oui, c'est le au.
Oh.
Okay. Donc au Maroc, par exemple. Au Maroc, on parle français. Super. Ok. Une autre idée peut-être? Another idea maybe? I mean, there are so many, il y en a tellement that it's really hard to focus on a single one. You could have mentioned, for example, La Suisse, okay, Switzerland. You can also mention the small, well, it's not a country, but Monaco, okay? There are so many, well, there Egypt, not Egypt, but like Tunisia, okay? So again, there's a lot of French-speaking countries in the world, okay? So if you want to kind of add your little pin here, I'll keep the link open for you to just, if you want to add something else, okay? Okay. So we're going to get back to the PowerPoint presentation. So this is the end of today's class. Donc c'est la fin du cours d'aujourd'hui. Il est 16h30. Est-ce que quelqu'un a des questions? Pas de questions? Alors on a vu pas mal de choses aujourd'hui. So we saw quite a few things here. We talked about, again, the third group verbs, which were kind of tricky, okay? And well, it's always basic grammar stuff, especially with the preposition, okay? That it can be kind of tricky since it's really not the same thing as in English, okay? Personne n'a de questions? Non? Okay. So, merci d'être venu, en tout cas. So let me know about someone. Okay, so there's a message with Felix Nino. Okay, so I never saw that game, Felix. So is it like a trivia game? I'm not sure. It's a card game. It is like a trivia, like ça s'est passé comment means like how did it happen? So is it like a trivia game about history maybe? Not sure. Ok. Bah, merci en tout cas d'être venu. I guess that we'll see or I see most of you on Tuesday. I hope so. If you're not there or if you're not going to be present, well, if you can write me an email, that would be great to kind of organize the class, okay? If you have any questions for the time being, you can always write me an email. If you have any recommendation on some stuff that you would like to discuss or rediscuss that we've seen so far, you can always write me an email, okay? Bah, si vous n'avez pas de questions, je vais vous laisser y aller et on se voit mardi du coup. Ça marche? Ok. Bah, merci beaucoup d'être venu et du coup à mardi. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
À mardi.
Bonne journée.
Au revoir. Bonne journée, Nora.
Merci beaucoup.
De rien, Chiara. Passe une bonne journée. Au revoir, le gars. Au revoir, Félix.